a great introduction, and shout out to Flag, everyone else who
Whoop,
is a
whoop.
part of this great space. I'm so honored to be here today with educators who are doing great work teaching our children in the nation. So let's hop right on in. So I'm pretty high energy. It's late at night, so I'm gonna be a little bit high energy, so it's a little bit kind of going calm.
Bring it
Hope
on.
you enjoy. So if you have a notepad or something like that, take it out, please, for some notes. I'm doing more so of a PowerPoint slide and commentary presentation for today. So chat box is open. I'm gonna try to make sure I can see that and comment or respond back if I see it in the chat box. So thank you all for joining. Let's go ahead and start. So I call this session I'm doing today, I call this using universal main ideas and themes to promote cultural relevancy. Now I know that a lot of you all are very smart. Y'all know about main ideas and things, but I guarantee this, I have seniors this year and they forget what these two are. And so tonight's a refresher for all of us to remind us of what those are and how you can use those to promote cultural relevancy. First thing first, y'all already know the biggest buzzword education right now is cultural responsive teaching. Y'all already know how it is, right? And so that's great. I love it. I've been doing this for a pretty long time before it got pretty mainstream, and other folks have as well. So I love to see this be at the mainstream level for everyone to partake in. Okay, this is around a 10-minute presentation. Won't last too long. I know you guys have a busy night and educators and got a plan, so I won't take too much of your time for tonight. Let's go ahead and begin. So I want to set my ethos. Okay, I like that word ethos. Okay, what makes me credible for this kind of presentation and to trust what I have to say regarding how to promote relevancy through main ideas and also through themes. So who am I? That's me over there. Um, I had to do me a photo shoot last year for some for my self care. So
Yeah.
definitely get one photo shoot for you all if you can do that. So I'm a graduate of Michigan State University, go green. I am from Detroit, Michigan, and my major was a very long one. Interdisciplinary studies in social science education. That's my first major. My second one was history education. So I really root my work in a lot of interdisciplinary content in social sciences. That's history, political science, economics, and etc. So I have the kind of multi-universal lens. Next, I'm a graduate also of Relay. Okay, I'm a Relay alumnus. They're around the whole country, right? I school program. I got a master's in secondary English language arts. I also will argue too that history is literature and literature is history. Reading a book that's wrote in the past is history as well. They go hand in hand together. Um, I am my sixth year teaching this year at Butler College Prep High School on the far south side of Chicago. I'm a part of the Noble Network of Charter Schools. So my first 5 years, I taught 10th grade language arts. I had a course titled Literacy in the Community. I love that course name. And I love the fact that my school gave us the autonomy to create our courses. And unfortunately, it's gone now. But when I first came to the school, we named it that. On here some curriculum that I chose, some very nuanced, very responsive text to because I taught the other Westmore, one of my favorite novels of all time. Wild the Black Kids, Sitting in the Cafeteria, Of Mice and Men, Bigger Than Hip Hop, Race and Economics, and The Eyes of Watching God. There are more books to that list too, but here's some main ones there that I use. If you see there, I kind of go in and out of some spaces, right? Of Mice and Men. That's a very, very popular book most people read, controversial in a way too, to The Eyes of Watching God. So I'm very, very versatile as far as the text I choose to teach my students. More on that later. Lastly, leadership too. I was a 10th grade team lead, humanities lead teacher, and ELA content lead last year or so. I did this work a little bit when I was in a couple years ago at Butler College Prep. All right. So we're teachers, right? So I gotta have an objective or objectives to root our work today and what we're doing. So I had to do it. I'm gonna read this out loud so we all can be on one accord as far as what we're doing for today. First one is define key vocabulary. I love this because even, and this is a very powerful key vocabulary. There are some words that are more important than others, and tonight you will see that in the presentation, such as main idea, theme, culture, relevancy, and culture relevancy in presentation by taking notes on definitions. Number two, connect definitions of terms in presentation and connect them to planning and cultural relevancy. We're going to root ourselves in that for today. And I hope by the time we're done, we'll have accomplished these goals for today. All right, educators, let's begin with a bit of themes here or definitions here. I important to always have definitions on certain things. It helps things be a little more clear. So I'm going to root this in this first part here, our theme and what that is. As you all know, the theme is the moral lesson or a lesson of a story. And almost every book, I can almost guarantee, has a theme present in it. Okay. I give here some examples here just to root ourselves in how I think about this in my framework when I make my content and deliver instruction. I think about examples of themes. The top one says, jealousy can lead to harm of those you profess to love. Oh my goodness, that's a good thing right there. All of us, for the most part, maybe have been jealous at one time or another, but I'm pretty sure most of you all, you've been in love before, or someone's loved you. Okay, keep that drift there. As far as we all have experienced those type of emotions there. Keep that in your brain as we go forward. The second one on this theme list here, I love this one at the bottom. This is from my favorite poet of all, the rest in heaven to Dr. Maya Angelou. And she said this that changed my whole entire life. You make a friend by being a friend. I need that in my life right now. I want some more friends right now. I'm in a part of my life right now. I want some more. All have experienced friendship. I hope at least. All right, next. Main idea. It tells what the story is mostly about. Examples here, y'all know what it is. We have here the top one, The Eyes Watching God. It's a coming of age story in love. When Janie was a 16-year-old, I think, girl and kissing Johnny Taylor over the fence, and she grows up and then she's stuck with this man named Tea Cake at the end, right? And I remember the story very, very well. I can go deeper into this story here. Her grandmother told her love will come. Woo, I'm sorry, I'm getting excited already. Till love will come. So sometimes those words there that your parents say, they stick with you in your decision making when you get older. I love that book. Okay. Last one at the bottom. Let's do A Mice of Men, for example. Friendship. That's the main idea of the whole book. I will argue it's friendship. Okay. So follow my flow and drift. Next terms here. We have the term set. Main ideas and themes. You all know that is how I go about thinking about that in my framework. Now it's time for some more words here. Cultural relevancy. I had to break it down by each word. So this is a very, very powerful word, culture. Okay. I love this word. Oh my goodness. Let's read it. The customs, the arts, social institutions, and achievements of a particular nation, people, or other social group. You can break down every single one of those words there. For culture, it's a humongous thing. Okay, that's that word there. Next, relevancy, the quality or state of being closely connected or appropriate. Connected, closely, and appropriate. We'll get into this a little bit later, but some books, depending on your school board or professional judgment, are banned. We got books that are banned from being taught. They deem it as inappropriate. But what determines that? And I will argue, if you know about cultural relevancy, you can professionally make a decision on whether or not a book as a teacher is right or not to teach for a classroom space. Let's be real here, you all. It's 2021. The kids are on social media. They are on Facebook. They're talking about things that we would never think about. Is the class a space for all things? Maybe not, but some things it is though. Next, I want to give you all this definition I made up. It's kind of like put together from the cultural relevancy. As y'all know, she has her own term. Everybody got a definition of this. I'm gonna give you mine today. Okay. Here's what cultural relevancy is to me. When teachers understand intimately, I love that word. They're intimately. Okay. You have to know, like, when you're dating somebody, right? You want to know them on a deep level. Same thing goes when it comes to culture. You have to know it. Sometimes, be in it, be amongst it, right? The practices of a particular group of students, and then using strategic text and other planning mechanisms to closely connect students' culture to their lives and others. Okay. It's a long one, but let's let that sit for a second and read again if you need to. This is a powerful definition here. Now, I love the part at the end of this definition here that says students' culture of their lives and others. Okay, their lives and others. You might have heard in the, Twitter, if you're on Twitter, having windows and mirrors, right? We are all the same in one regard across the globe. We are all humans. We're all humans on this planet, all of us, okay? And there are certain things that we can tap into that can build not just cultural relevancy and your demographic, but a universal one as well we all can connect to. Okay, let's keep on going. How to put this into practice. Main ideas, themes, and cultural relevancy. Okay, so first of all, I argue this all day long. You, as a professional educator, can choose almost any book, unit, or area to study, and help students connect it to their lives and others, leading to powerful instruction. Tapping into that universal themes or main ideas we all can connect to. That even if the book may not have a personal character you're covering in your class that kids don't see like themselves in certain race terms or sexuality terms or etc., there are some things that can connect them to their story. Okay, that's universal. Here's some steps here that I recommend that you can think about. First of all, choosing text. That's a pretty simple one, but if you're culturally relevant, you want to, pretty much be very in tune with your content area, what the kids need sometimes, right? Go into the neighborhood that you teach in and walk around or, something like that, or talk to more of those kids in the neighborhood. Go to a community center and have a conversation with them. You will hear what's going on. You will hear their needs and their wants and you will hear that. And from those kind of talks there that I picked up, they're talking about this issue of like the Westmore making hard decisions. I was at lunchtime one day in my school. I'm walking through and I sat down, meeting the kids or whatever, and they were having a very deep conversation about decision making. Decision making. Now, out of my head, what kind of book can I use for something like this if I want to do this? Before I cover my first unit, I know a book, The Westmore. The first book we covered, the theme was decisions. That thing had the kids in that reading that book. They were reading that book. I was like, wow, they really are into this book. Because I chose certain themes and ideas that they needed to hear and learn about. That wasn't just about, their skin color, for example, or it's about a universal theme they need to hear about, learn about. So choosing text. Being culturally relevant helps with that. Writing enduring readings and expressions rooted in culturally relevant main ideas and themes. I love this part of planning. You got to plan this out. Okay. You cannot do how to plan. You need to plan. And this is a basic tenet of planning. Y'all know it. Enduring understandings. I love those. It's a statement you're going to be able to think about as you go through the lesson or the unit. And lastly, essential questions. By the time you're done with this lesson, what are you going to answer in a intellectual way in your writing or your speaking or etc.? Next part, you want to gird the course on those culturally relevant main ideas and themes, enduring understandings, and essential questions. So you gird that in your lessons as you go about and teach in your units. All right, some examples here from my own personal class and my own unit plans. So I chose a book called Of Mice and Men. I did teach that in my sophomore year for 2 years before I moved to 12th grade. Here are some culturally relevant main ideas and themes that I chose to help root everyone into this kind of book we're reading. First of all, A Mice and Men is very controversial. However, though, I believe that you're trained very well. Some of the very sensitive things in there, as far as language in there, I think the N-word is used, you can teach that. I blot it out. We don't really cover it in class, but I talk about, listen, it's a whole different era of people's thought processes. We're going to break that down, understand that, to understand what's happening in the era. Here are some things here as far as main ideas and themes. Friendships must be tested to be established. Come on now. Y'all know that, and I know in my neighborhood, loyalty is key, okay, in the hood. I'm from the hood, so I understand that. You be my friend, we got to be loyal, okay? Got to be tested, though, to be established. That is a very powerful, theme there. Here's some main ideas. Friendship, race, class, morality. We all deal with that. Here's some more questions here. How was friendship tested in the novel? Lenny as the main characters there. When faced with a moral dilemma, what determines what you would decide? This was a great part of my class. We talked about George Lenny. Talked about when he had to kill Lenny, right? Oh my goodness gracious. Some kids said, that wasn't loyal. You don't kill your best friend. even what he did to that girl. I love that conversation there. But you see how, again, these universal themes, it gets kids excited, and they talk about deep things like morality in the classroom space via the book. Here's another one. I love this book. If you haven't read this book, write it down and read it. Octavia Butler, a prolific author. I love Octavia Butler. Her book called Kindred, that thing changed me on a whole new level. I said, how can I cover this one? Okay, follow my protocol. Let's look at the top list here. Manners and themes. Happiness can still be found even in the most dire circumstances. We just left out Black History Month, and I find it very profound that some of my ancestors who were enslaved, they still found some ways to get married. Jumping the broom was a very powerful cultural norm there on the slave plantation when they got married. They laughed and they had sometimes some joyous occasions. How did they do that? They're still human. And even in oppression sometimes, out of that, you can still find some ways of humanity being displayed. I find that very prolific and profound to me. I tap into that in this book and read these main ideas. Next one here, power, gender, and race impact the lived experiences of people. That's back in the 1800s, right in the story, or even today, present day. Next one, power, gender, race, oppression, even time travel. First of all, time travel. We never done it before. Actually, you have done it before. When you imagine yourself going back to the 1800s or back in the time period you're studying, you are going back in time. Yes, you are. You are using your imagination to tap back into a certain era that you never even lived in. That is powerful. You do time travel. Also, the future too. This computer and this Zoom, how did that come to fruition? Imagination. They thought about a future thing that wasn't even. It's powerful. You get kids tapping into this main idea of time travel and imagination, you have no idea what you unlock. That's why I do it this way. Lastly, some questions here, almost done, you all. And doing understandings here to root myself in the unit as we're going through it. How did enslaved Blacks find happiness in the antebellum plantations or the South? How did power, gender, and race impact the lived experiences of people in the antebellum era? This book, Kindred, is a very profound book. I won't give it away, but it's like very, very good book. And you can kind of see where she did it, Octavia Butler, you understand the oppression perspective, and you also, in a very kind of like weird way, you also understand the oppressor perspective and the mentality they had to have to oppress someone else in the way of like enslaving them. She did a really good job with that. And tapping into those themes there while being culturally relevant, you produce these amazing questions, right? And amazing content for kids to engage with. Almost done. All right. Questions now. So thank you all for that presentation there, looking at that and listening. Sorry I did not see all the chats and what's going on there, but if you all have any questions or anything like that, let me know. I would love to answer. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I got one more slide left. So questions, then my last slide. Thank you all.
I'm going to say I have one question, and I'll wait to see if any pop in the chat too. So I think we've kind of attended to any comments, and I've dropped also some links. Hopefully that's okay. I know in your videos on your YouTube channel, you've mentioned, because again, I told you I'm a creep and a huge fan of your work. So we're just going to like get into that. When you look at, I know you speak to like, how do we learn in our space? I think was kind of how you phrased it. Like, how do we learn in this space? Do you feel like every year you do the same kinds of things to set students up to be able to like learn in our space, like culturally as a classroom culture? And can you speak at all to how you do that? Like how you get them kind of wrapping their minds around, like, here's what we do here. And now let's dive into some of these topics that might not be easy. I know that's kind of a hard question, but
it's okay. That's a great question though, Meredith. That's a great question there. And I will just say what I do in my classroom is about culture. Before you do any of these things here, you gotta have a culture of learning and expectations. So my classroom, every class we have, the last 3 to 4 years, I have like 4 to 5 different classroom cultural norms that we follow. The first one is we rise and fall as a community. Number 2 is step up, step back, and step in. 3 is no opt out. 4 is question and challenge. And the 5th one is this is a sacred space and time respected. So
Mm,
I first of all, kids know you are in a learning space. And especially for my Black students I teach, our ancestors couldn't read and write back in these days that I'm covering teaching. You are going to honor and respect the fact that they fought and died to learn how to read and write. You have the privilege to teach, to learn in this class. We want to respect the space. That's number one. And number two, talking to students, being around the culture, right? Institutions and things like that. You get a pause of certain things. You're
mm,
having conversations, right? Engaging. And you kind of feel and see what they need as far as their humanity. I teach skill too. Everything aligns with the standard, no worry, standard align. I do all that type of stuff too. But the first priority for me is their humanity. How to help these young adults navigate this very, very, very sometimes cruel world. It's a good world too. We got good things too, but sometimes very cruel. How to navigate that. And so when I do my teaching, I set the tone in those core
mm.
values there. I talk about things that, in a conversational format, what are the things you need in the classroom space? I go around a school or a neighborhood. I see some of my students there and kind of listen in on what's going on and then choose from those conversations the text and things and ideas that we want to study and cover.
Well, and I think a lot about, because like, I mean, and I know we're all teachers here pretty much, but we all do so many similar things in that way. Like class culture is huge. And then, whether it's history, language arts, teaching an additional, a second or a third, what additional language, there's so much vulnerability, I think, that
Mhm.
comes into play when you're having hard conversations, when you're learning a language or, playing a sport, playing an instrument, whatever. We've had a lot of conversations in our department this year of with virtual students. We've got Zoomies and Roomies, like I was telling you before, and it's been definitely challenging to create that culture that a lot of us are used to, especially if you're used to, and I'm just going to say it, if you're used to your students liking you and you're used to feeling like a pretty darn good teacher. Like this year has been like, like, is any of this working? Is this thing on? Like, is anybody there? And that's been a hard cultural piece. I know you mentioned when you said the space is sacred, like respect it. It reminds me of, like, to me, my three rules are like, not yours are like really nice. Your five cultural pieces, my three sound kind of mean, but it's don't lie to me, don't waste my time, don't make me look bad. And I'm gonna do the same for you. Like it's like I got you, but like we're gonna work really hard in this like space together, and then you leave and it's good. And like kind of like you said, it's a sacred space. So let's like respect it, let's honor it. I'm worried that these days after this year, accountability is going to be like, I don't know, I'm worried that we're abusing like accountability if it's attendance or zeros, like whatever. What if your I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on creating class culture and diving into some of these conversations digitally, virtually, all of the above?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would just say this: students who are learning at home, there's some that obviously, they have very difficult situations going on. Especially I know in Chicago, my students are, taking care of families and working and
Mm,
things like that. Um, but I also think that if they have the ability in their homes to partake in the educational space online, I encourage my students to, for the best they can, to treat the online space as a
mm.
classroom space. So my first week, everybody was on Zoom then, so everybody, getting used to the school year, made
Right.
that made that very clear. Like, I'm not gonna, come at you if you are working or you gotta take care of your family, like handle your business.
Mm,
But for those that maybe have an opportunity and you have a space to work or you can partake in the space, do so and act like it's a classroom space.
mm,
And when you repeatedly say these things, passion, and you showcase that you actually care about them,
mm,
and you show them that even despite this pandemic that's going on, it's very, very brutal on everyone, even myself included. Um, the education you're receiving is still important.
mm,
It's still important. And just to get them invested in that part, your education, is going to lead to you put the work in, etc. College and better jobs and a better future for yourself.
yep.
And therefore, if you partake in that, you can get there. So kind of like balancing like love and compassion, and
Mm,
then also make sure if it's possible in there to add in, I would call it expectations as well.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's the hard part is I think during this experience, like adjusting expectations has felt like lowering standards. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
when you're like, I'm gonna delete this, I'm gonna delete this, like, let me do that. And then it's like, like but I'm a good teacher and I have high expectations. Like, we've made easy like a 4-letter word. Like this can't be easier. And some kids are still like, "Oh, this is all I have to do. Like, are you sure that was really easy? It's okay. Like, it's okay if easy is the goal right now in terms of like, school is not canceled. Like, I need you to do X and Y and Z. We're still in school. And as long as you, like you said, are doing your best and bringing the best that you possibly can offer, whatever that means, and us too. That's all we can ask, I think. It's just really hard. We said a couple of weeks ago, I didn't expect, because like you're saying with themes and choosing text, and like this is heavy heavy stuff for us to do and so identity based. We get excited about it. Like your enthusiasm is contagious and like very obvious. And so we get excited and we're like, okay, I can't wait to teach it. And I didn't realize that every day I would need like affirmations to be like, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. Like you're doing enough, because every day this is just so different than it's been in a lot of ways for a lot of people. I don't know if your experience like virtually has been the same, because I know you guys are still online, but you're allegedly going to go back in person in April, but like probably not. Like, so it's a lot. Would you say that the things, sort of like the classics, like the heavy hitters, just pedagogically, culturally, all those kind of things, still work for you? Like giving lots of feedback, communicating with students. Would you say that those also transfer to the virtual setting?
I would say yes. There's some things that I think obviously just need to be adjusted because it's online and it's a different circumstances.
Mm,
But I still try the best I can to maintain, at least on my end. I know the students and I always have the ability to do work or engage sometimes, and that's totally fine. But for me as a teacher, those that are engaged, and actually, I'm not kidding, they're actually engaged with work. At least 70% are engaged with work.
yeah.
I do provide feedback. I do, office hours, all those typical things you do in a normal school. I
Mhm.
do the same exact things to the best of my ability, just pretty much online. So only thing is missing this school year really, students face to face
Mm,
and be in the building. But also I will say I've taken my curriculum and I've honed it. So,
mhm,
5 days building up certain things, but now I really have it honed. I have 2 live classes a week. Well, I have 3 classes, but I see them each class twice a week live for like
mm,
an hour. And I
okay.
have async videos too, 1 or 2 of those a week as well. So they're getting, at least I would say about, 3.5, 4 days of like instruction as they normally
Mm,
would in the school year. The async video is a little bit shorter, put 20 minutes long, short activity, but at least about 3 days of instruction totally like online. That's pretty good. You ask me, and I think the way I hone it, they are still learning what I deem to be, and the network too in school, varying skills and content that get them ready for their college days in about 8 months or so. So I feel very confident that I'm doing that with fidelity.
absolutely. I think the only way I've stayed afloat this year is the asynchronous time, because like they're all working and I'm like like trying to keep up with all the things, and it's like independent work, when they do something and then you're like, okay, gonna need you to read this and answer these questions. Give me a sec, and then you're quick like grading through their little quizzes or whatever. Parker in the chat had said, in my classroom, I have students that come from very different backgrounds. How do you navigate selecting resources that are hopefully culturally relevant for all, and or how do you frame a text when you know it might only be culturally relevant for a portion of the class?
Yeah, very good question. And this is where I recommend skill. I don't recommend teachers who are not skilled in this framework of ideology of cultural relevancy. Like I said in the beginning, culture is very, very complex. It's all those things. Institutions, it is all of that. So if
Mm,
you lack some basic knowledge of like culture of what you're teaching, either on your kid level or globally, and your teams, maybe more difficult to implement this.
mm,
So if you have a class, for example, you're covering, let's see, a class that I'm not sure, a history class, for example, mixed demographic of kids there, or a different type of race in a book you're covering, as far as the main characters. This is where you have to have a little bit of strategy in how you present the book to kids, if this is what you want to do. Explain to them, obviously, a book like Kindred. We're talking about on this book time travel, and also talk about the Black experience of going back in time and experience of being an enslaved person.
Mm,
Okay. This takes a lot of sensitivity that you must be able to present to kids about what this means. You got to set norms. We're talking about people who were enslaved, people who were sexually assaulted, people who were beaten and chained up. This isn't a book to like be laughing about. This is a very serious thing we're going to cover, and setting that tone. And also understanding as well, like once you get beyond that first initial introduction, how do you find this type of text that may be more about a Black person's history and find those like all themes? You
mm,
tap into the character. You must know the book at a deep level. In the book Kendrick, it's a great part in the book that I love and I taught in my class about pain. Okay. Going back in time, she was experiencing all the things that a person enslaved experienced. And read her, she was talking about in the book, that pain became a friend to her
mm.
confidant. So I will tap into that. Okay, class, we're reading about this book, right? Let's talk about this theme here of pain. Yes, Dana's pain, where'd it come from? She was oppressed and she was abused by these people who were owning her back in the past. But also, let's tap into this a little bit as well. What about pain in general? What is that she's experiencing? Pain as a friend. Have you experienced this behavior before? A pain being a friend, going through a very traumatic event or seeing a traumatic event, and pain's your confidant and your friend. And in a subtle type of way, not a complete way, but a subtle type of way, you can help the person to relate
Mm.
to some of that themes and ideas from that framework. So it takes a lot of work and practice, and just knowing the book, knowing the character, knowing yourself, your accountability, and covering things like that. It's very, very deep. You want to make sure that you're just being very sensitive to text selection, and if it's appropriate for your kids and the age group, and even maturity. There are some students that may not have the maturity just yet to engage with certain
Mm.
things like this, or are not there yet. So you have to know your kids and know how ready you are or they are to engage in some of this very complex, difficult work, especially when we talk about cultural relevancy and race and power. That can cause a lot of people to be riled up and things to open up. And you prepare for that and have cultural norms set and things, etc., to do that in your space.
Man, and that's I'm glad you pointed that out too, because that's the work on the front end piece. I think when we get like there's got to be, like you said, planning and intention and work on the front end, and like and time and energy. And it's like, what do we not have as teachers? Time and energy, like ever it feels like. But that it sounds like, well, and we know, but I mean, I appreciate that you're really emphasizing that, like, no, there needs to be some work on the front end, because if there isn't, you're gonna walk your sound, and let me know if I'm putting words in your mouth. It sounds like, if you don't do that, you're gonna walk yourself into a conversation you're not ready for, you haven't thought about them having, you don't know how to respond to, they're not, they're just like actually not ready to have it. Or like you said, they're like hee, whatever, and you're like, this isn't funny. And as teachers, it's so quick to take things so personally. So suddenly, if one kid's laughing in like a moment that you think is serious, it's like, that's it, we're not reading it, and all of a sudden you're blowing. And it's like, well, you should have seen, like, that was probably preventable if, like, with the work on the front end. I know, embarrassingly, and we've had this conversation on like Twitter and different places, but embarrassingly, there have been, see, Kelly, I knew I'd bring the guajeros back in. I remember the name. If we were talking, I'm telling you, this is like, it legitimately comes up in like almost every webinar, but we get so busy, or we find resources that we're, buying off of Teachers Pay Teachers, or we see somebody share on Twitter and we go, oh, hey, that looks pretty cool. Devin said he used whatever, whatever. And maybe our populations are totally different, or we're totally different. And suddenly we're using things that have a perspective we can't speak to. Or again, we're just literally not putting the work on the front end in, and we're like, oh, this will be great. I'll just print off this PDF. Like, we're going to do this little worksheet, good story. And that's the one that she's referring to with the guajeros, which is very cultural, and I used not well. And so that just ended up being like the narrative for this one place that we just kept, that perpetuated. And that was problematic, that was harmful. So I think I think that's important what you're saying about the work on the front end, because if not, it seems like it would be really easy to get carried away with the like romanticizing of the theme. Like, we're gonna read. I haven't read Kindred, but I literally added it to my list when you said it. I was like, excuse me, open up Kindle in my other tab, like added it to my Amazon one. Like adding that, and then like, I'll just read it as they read. We'll learn together. It sounds like these are not things we need to be like just learning together. Like, there needs to be intent. And I appreciate you saying that. I think we'd love to be like, whatever as teachers, but like, you're going to want to plan for those conversations is what I hear you saying.
You're totally right, Meredith. And I think that, this movement that education is in of DEI, anti-racism, right? We're hitting some very deep, sometimes very dark and painful themes and ideas. Racism is a scourge that has not put to death, and that's even globally. So when we talk about these things, it does require a level of patience, sensitivity, understanding, training to be able to really transform your class to a space where, as a teacher, right, you're at a place where I would not recommend a person teaching Kindred and you're racist. That's not going to work. So you can tell from the energy when you read a book, like that happens a lot. You read a book and you're racist or you're prejudiced, something like that. It's not going to work out too well if you as a teacher it isn't there where you need to be.
Right.
So sometimes I think, talking about students, right, even teachers, I've gone through a lot of training sessions, right? I went to Michigan State, so I've been doing this kind of work. I was in college, right? So when I approach these things, I have that background and that training. I was an intercultural aide at Michigan State, so I was able to have these talks to get trained on how to have conversations like this, how to bring my own prejudices out of that darkness mode. It takes a lot of work, So if you are a teacher on this call and you're interested in this type of like classroom space and universal themes, it may take a little bit of training from your network, maybe school, or someone you necessarily know, maybe Twitter space, to help you with some of this internal work that you may need to go through first before you even cover things like I covered today.
Right. Well, and not only the topic, but also like how you're gonna like not even just like what you're gonna say and how you're gonna handle X, but like you're saying, like the internal work of like how you're gonna handle X when students do Y, or whatever else. Like you said, like how many times have you been looking at something serious or like saying something serious, and again they laugh or they snicker, like you said, or whatever, and it's like, hey, and now we've taken the focus, like we've focused on like teacher emotions and how I feel like I'm really disappointed, and now we're like teacher centering, and it's like, okay, but you should have, I mean, how are we reacting to all these things, and how are we like mentally preparing to present hard stuff, and to, like you said, really imagine across time periods, imagine across experiences, which is extremely powerful. One conversation that we've had in the world language community is, or that we have often, I should say, in different ways, in different places, is like author voice, and kind of who gets to tell whose stories. And that's always an interesting piece is, if people are writing creatively, if they're writing outside of where they're from or their race or their nationality or like all of these kind of things, like what does that mean for the story? Does the story still get told? Who's telling it? That's actually this Thursday's webinar with Kia London. She's going to be talking about the Language Learner Advisory Board, which is like, they do that. They evaluate texts for like bias, for different tropes, and like for all sorts of things. And they're like a super diverse board for that reason. And so that's always an interesting conversation among language teachers, is how are we choosing, like any teachers, but language teachers, like I teach Spanish, I'm a non-native speaker of Spanish. So I was using that Guajiro text. And it's like Guajiros are like the children that live in, I nailed it, Kelly Cita, we brought it back in. No, they are like, that's the word that refers to these children in Guatemala that sort of live in these garbage dumps. And my example is always, I told that story, used the text, it was a PDF, had little comprehension questions, felt really good about it, but we never came back to Guatemala. Like so we just sort of perpetuated that, like, oh, they're, poor, but they're happy, and like that kind of thing. And like, I don't know that they're even, none of that was like good, but it was a resource that was there and I bought it. And I think that's what a lot of world language teachers struggle with is if I'm not a native speaker of the language, like I'm trying to find as many cultural resources as I can. How can I tell if someone's speaking from that cultural perspective, that culturally relevant kind of thing? Or what if they told that story damn well, but they're not from there? Like, how can I tell the difference? That can be really confusing. Is there any way, do you have any process for choosing your text or your authors that kind of come into like what you can speak to or what you're curious about? And maybe you choose more like, do you choose any like creative writing as well?
Yeah, that's a
Like,
very good question there. Yeah, so I think for me, what I do, I never kind of teach beyond what I don't know.
mm,
I would try it. If I don't know a certain text or author, like I know my authors. I know Octavia Butler. I know who I've read her books, so I know what she brings to the table.
mm,
And I think it's important teachers to get that. Even if you're so excited to want to get this try this book out. Or I
right.
heard it was good. You don't know the book and know the author, know what you bring to the table. It's hard to even for yourself or for kids to
Mm,
analyze critically these authors because criticizing as an historian, right, is what we do. We criticize and talk about history and interpret it again. And it's important for kids to know those biases, right, those perspectives. So as you get into the book, you don't know that it can make it very difficult for kids to or yourself to really
mm,
go in deep as you want to go in. So I don't go beyond. I don't know. And also, if I let's say I think I know, I have friends. I have great
right.
academic coaches that support me. So when I'm doing lesson planning right, I have extra eyes and ears to help me figure out, okay, try this. No, I don't have that on Devin. Explain that for me real fast. How this working? If it's gonna do this or that. So before I present the material, I've had like myself look at it a couple times, of course, academic coach look at it a couple times, content lead, maybe a couple of friends too, for my units to really get that pristine, crisp sound magnets and themes that I want kids to cover and teach and learn about.
Mm. Well, absolutely. And I think, man, that's so hard too. Um,
A lot of work, a lot of work. Like
ugh,
I
yeah.
know the thing, but what I've done, and lucky for me, I'm single, no pets or cats. Hope to start dating. Maybe change. I have a wife and kids, but I've had the ability in the last 6 years to really use my time,
Mm,
especially my summertime.
yeah.
And I don't spend my whole summer planning, but I spend at least the last part of June.
Mm,
Then we got 2 weeks in June. Or we have school in the third week, so last week of June. Um, I use that time to really think about.
yeah.
Um, I plan. So when I have training in August time, I have most of my things ready. I can get it looked at by my coaches and stuff like that, and then I have something pristine. It takes time. If
Mm,
we're trying to be transformative educators, that a lot of you all on here are, we got to find a way to put the time in. It's needed. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, and some people maybe don't want to put the time in, but your time extra. It may take that, like right now, being on a Zoom call like this, learning and engaging to get that
right.
next extra if you need to be that transform educator. And so people, I can't do it in 9 to 5. I had to do it extra time. If
Right.
we're trying to go to the next level, it may take uh, more time and training too. So be ready for that if you're open to
Mm,
growing training time.
yeah. Well, absolutely. Not to, I feel like ooh, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I feel like we use words like tireless and effortless, and we try to, make things sound like they're supposed to look like less, And I'm like, there is nothing wrong with being tired or looking like you showed effort. Like, it's okay to go and be like, I worked my ass off at that summer freaking workshop and they paid me $200, or they didn't, right? We do it for free or whatever. But like you said, you're like, I cut my break short, like a week and a half, whatever, do the damn thing, and do X, Y, and Z, and then I'm ready. And I feel like we romanticize, like as a profession, we again romanticize like being able to use something on the fly, whatever. And it's like, yeah, like maybe not everything's like for being usable on the fly. Like if it's worth working in, it's probably worth working in well. and using well and learning about, obviously, and whatever. But I worry sometimes that there's so much asked of us. Like Kelly said in the chat, more like, we're paying them, like, yeah, I'll do a workshop. I'll pay you. Like, whatever. I mean, that's how it feels like. Our pre-planning starts July like 24th. And it's like, goodbye, summer. Like, people are going to Cabo. I'm like, what for? You have 2 days. Like, where are you going? And that's what it feels like, is there's so much not taken from us, but like, maybe taken from us, or so much that we have to ask for, whatever, that when we can find like resources that we're like, oh, this book is really, like you said, this book is really lovely. Like, I really want to teach this. I bet my students would love it. Like, maybe resist the urge to like get kind of carried away with the idea, or caught up in what it could be, because I think that's where we can misstep, or frankly, like, kind of, abuse the best parts of a text, because we, do it poorly at best, do it inappropriately at worst, and do it, harmfully at worst. And so I think I appreciate that you're not sugarcoating, like, that it takes time, effort, like conversations, work. It takes work. I don't, it's not going to be effortless. It's going to be effortful. And I think effortful is okay. Parker mentioned in the chat too, like, that's been weighing on him. I'm assuming, Parker, you're mentioning like the author kind of ownership pieces, and so also appreciating that you incorporate text, and that you feel like you can speak to and really speak about, and all those things. Are there any last question for me, at least, are there any texts you've stopped using, or are there any texts like over the last several years that you've just felt kind of like the ebb and flow of what you want to teach, and you've said like, no, I don't think I'm going to do this one anymore?
Yeah, this is a good question. It changes.
Mm,
I change as I read more books and I stay engaged. Also, my students change every year as well. The culture changes sometimes as well.
mm,
So as are going through life and living and having talk with kids, things change.
yeah.
It's okay to change. And sometimes you may realize, and again, I'm not perfect. You may realize, this text I'm covering or I taught just maybe wasn't really hitting it, or just not doing
Mhm.
what it needs to do. And I told kids before, like, this book we covered last year or whatever, probably wasn't the best book to cover. And the kids understand that, you might make mistakes along the way as far as text selection. And I definitely covered what happened one time in my career. I covered a book and read with the kids. It happened one time. I'm not in front of the lie with you. It happened one time. Luckily, the book was a pretty decent book. But again, if you don't know the text, you're like, what are they reading? So um, I think that, in closing, great teaching happens with time,
Mm,
being transformative with time. And so I know we're in this big rush,
yep.
and I understand it. It's urgent, right? We have to get equity,
Mm,
and that can happen in policy. It cannot happen in the heart and the mind. That takes more time.
mm. Man, well, and yeah, I mean, like, we're living in like, hurry up, you needed to be culturally relevant yesterday, like, and then there's this Instagram culture of like teachers showing their perfect, whatever. And it's like, oh my God, like, on top of this, I have to be like, I have to know what they're reading. I have to know what they're, and learn all these new things. And I got to make it look cute and bright and airy, because this person's classroom, there's a lot of pressure in those ways. And especially with time, especially this year, ironically, when everything's weird, yeah, right. Exactly, Kelly. And I have to make a TikTok video. Like, if I could figure out TikTok, I would. Oh, I have a student aide, and I'm like, Micaiah, teach me TikTok, because I have one video, but I had to have like 4 devices rigged up to do it. I was like, can't figure out how to layer the audio. This is upsetting. So I just had like my computer and all these different things. Right. I mean, all these people look like they're killing it. And I'm so, so grateful. Not only killing it, but like, because maybe they are, whatever, but they look like they're killing it like quick, like, I did a little reading over the summer, and now poof, culturally relevant, whatever. And it's like, I don't think it works like that, but okay, good for you. And it does feel just like a lot, and then all of the layers after that go, okay, who can I ask about these things? You mentioned, talking with colleagues, talking with friends, like, who are the people in your life you can hash these things out with, and you're not burdening them, because you can't just keep going to the same people, like, you're my, no, like, that's that's no, that's not going to work. So I think, gosh, I think all of that's really important. And I really appreciate that it's not like, oh, it's easy. It's a how-to, like it's a quick fix. It's not like it's going to take some inner and outer work. So thank you so much. I'm going to relink your YouTube channel and your Twitter handle, if that's okay. Is there anything else you want to share? I know I told you I'm such a creep. Uh, listen, we're embracing it in this series. I've just creeped on everybody and invited all the people I creep on. Anything else you want to share in terms of resources or tonight's resources or anything like that?
Well, I will say that this book is very popular. Everybody has probably read the book by now, but Jordan
Mm,
Hammond, I'm sorry, her book on cultural responsive teaching, I think is a great place like to start far as your journey maybe with teaching with cultural relevancy.
mm,
Additionally, I will also recommend as far as at least on identity perspective, if you're interested in growing in that area or your kids to read or read on your own, like personal reading, there's a book by Dr. Beverly Tatum.
mm,
So she is a racist scholar and she's an old school one. So
mm.
a lot of the nuanced ones today, like Abraham Kendi, right? They're more of a nuanced scholar. And I'm a historian, so I'm critical of his work. I like his work, but I've had people I've read that maybe I think are a little better. And I think that Dr. Tatum, her book is called "Why Are the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?"
So good.
That is phenomenal. It's
Yes.
a group and I recommend for me personally, begin there and to begin your
Uh,
journey of intuitions of being, DI of being, knowing yourself right, having this hard talk with yourself, outline some very strong frameworks in the book that will help you begin to journey. So that's it. It was great having you all tonight. I hope that tonight something bless you. You can take about your class or yourself. Look forward to hope being part of this more in the future. Thanks, I got Meredith and everyone else.
Dude,
Thank you.
Devin, thank you so much. I was peeking because I know, listen, this is so, my bookshelves are organized by color. And I was like, that book is black with yellow writing. And I thought it would be like in arm's reach, but it's not. It's like two shelves over. And I was like, hold on, I'll show the cover. But then I had to like my little green screen pod here, which looks like I'm like another universe, but it's like over there. So I can't quite reach it. No, phenomenal book. And yeah, phenomenal book. So Beverly Tatum is incredible. Yeah, Kelly, we could have like reached like, yay. Love it. Well, Devin, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you share. Thank you. I know you're taking a Twitter break, so like, I'm not saying come back to Twitter, but I'm saying like, miss you a little bit on Twitter. I'm just throwing that out there. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, thank you, and thank you for the ability to record tonight. So appreciate everything, and thanks for being a teacher, and thanks for being an awesome teacher.
Thank you so much. All right. We'll see
Absolutely.
you all. Have a great
Yay. Bye, everybody. I know, Kelly, I do miss another creeping outlet. Listen,